first two songs we'd like to offer are written by Swami Ananda, He Who Closed the Field and May We Serve Him.
This reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Week 9, By Thinking Can We Arrive at Understanding? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. There are many places in the Gospels where we see Jesus in open conflict with the Pharisees, that is to say, with man-made as opposed to true mystical tradition. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 15, we see a good example of how they and he locked horns. Then some of the scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem came and asked Jesus, Why do your disciples break our ancient tradition and eat their food without washing their hands properly first? Jesus, after scolding them for their hypocrisy in observing lesser rules so carefully while ignoring the much more important ones, said, Listen and understand this thoroughly. It is not what goes into a man's mouth that makes him common or unclean. It is what comes out of a man's mouth that makes him unclean. It wasn't that Jesus counseled against such wholesome practices as washing one's hands before eating. In an age, however, when lesser rules were given too much importance relative to the truly important observances, cleansing the heart of impure desires, for example, he emphasized the supreme importance of loving God and of communing with him. The Pharisees, the orthodox religionists of his day, in other words, had brought true religion down to a level of intellectual hair-splitting. They mistakenly considered the way to understanding to lie through a minefield of definitions which they tried to refine to ultimate exactitude. Jesus taught, however, that the intellect alone can never lead one to truth. Without love, indeed, there is no ultimate verity. Without fixity of purpose, born of the heart's devotion, the intellect wanders endlessly. It cannot settle for long on anything. As the Bhagavad Gita says in the 2nd chapter, the intellects of those who lack fixity of spiritual purpose are inconstant, their interests endlessly ramified. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Hi, this is Manisha. I'm Dambara. We were here for about 7 years until we moved up to Washington State to Ananda Farm, Camino Island, where we've been since last April. So that's our update. After service, you can tell us what you've been up to. What does ramified mean? That was in that reading, you know. Endlessly ramified. Do you know, Vajra? Ha ha ha. Bah. Shame on you. We didn't plan that. Seriously. Okay, ramified. It means like a tree branch, just getting smaller and smaller and smaller into all those little branches. So it's like you can picture these Pharisees, you know, just like defining something. And so, well, no, what about this? Okay, well, and then in this case, we'll do, no, what about this? And then just all these little, so that's how it got. Just like endless, you know. Instead of being in the heart of the matter, where it all originated, they kind of got further and further away from that. And that's what Jesus was doing, was trying to bring it back to the heart, to the origin place. We just spent a month, actually, all of January in Israel, in the Holy Land, on a pilgrimage that was led by Asha in a nutshell, she was inspired when she was in India to take a bunch of Indians over to the Holy Land to just kind of teach them who Jesus was and how he fit into this whole lineage, since they're just totally into self-realization and Yogananda's path, but they don't really culturally get how Jesus fits in as much. We kind of take it for granted here in the West because we're raised that way. But there, it's like, okay, cool, he's one of the avatars, you know, but they don't know that much about him. So she just thought it would be really nice to actually be in the place where he was. Now, Indians relate to devotion and to being in holy places and to being around holy people. So as one of the directors there said, Indians are the easiest people in the world to take on a pilgrimage because you just put them in a holy place and they just know what to do. They just soak it up. So she wanted to bring them, but she also knew that if she was going to just have a pilgrimage and announce it, all the people in Palo Alto would want to sign up for it. So she said, okay, I've got to have 2 of them. First the Palo Alto people, then the Indian people. So we went on the first one, the Palo Alto one, which was a lot of fun because it was a lot of old buddies that we knew. Well, not old buddies, but anyway, you get the idea. We used to be down there, so we knew a lot of these people, and that was great. And part of that was music. A lot of the people in Palo Alto just know singing from lots of years, and so they were able to express that vibration through music. And we knew that the Indian folks are kind of newer on the path than the long-term American folks were, and weren't as steeped in the music. And so my wife had the thought, what if Dambara stays for the Indian pilgrimage and helps contribute the music part of it? And Asha thought that was a peachy idea. Then they came and talked to me about it. And then, so one thing and another, I ended up staying, and then it worked out where she could stay too. And we just had a really fun time extending and meeting all the Indian people. And I have to say, Indian people are just full of heart and full of devotion. And that's kind of typical of Portland too. I mean, compared to other big cities. Now, okay, let it go to your heart, I guess, huh? But that's the topic here today, is Jesus talking to Pharisees. Okay, so the other thing to say about what the pilgrimage did is it helped bring the whole way we were raised about Jesus and the Bible as being like a zillion years ago, and just kind of historical out there. Well, how does this relate to me? And all these and thous, and talking about sheep and falling into a ditch and Pharisees and Gentiles, and what does this mean to me? So it kind of brought it all to real time, where in a lot of cases Asha just talked about real-time examples for, with Swami Kriyananda, or Swami used to talk about his life with Yogananda. And you can kind of piece it together how it was with Jesus back then, and how it was just like it is for us now, figuring out the path day by day with the people around us that, are fellow travelers on the path, and the teachers that have been here longer that share the joy with us, just like parents will share the news with their kids they're trying to bring up. And it's very alive in that way. So it helps to try to translate these sort of archaic sayings into something that's real. So with Jesus talking to the Pharisees and saying, you guys, you're just thinking all the time, and that's not what it's all about. What God is about is just love. And that was not an easy thing to do, because he was challenging a very entrenched institution. We're sort of in a similar situation nowadays. I mean, we have institutions, health, government, old systems. For those of you that know the Yuga system, I won't try to go into it in detail, but talk to Vyasa afterwards. We've come from a time where the understanding of things was very basic, black and white, structural. This is as much as I can understand. Give me a rule and I'll follow it, period. And everybody else has to do the same. It has to do with the amount of energy that's coming into the planet. It goes in cycles. It's a long story, literally. But we've come out of that dark age where our understanding was kind of at its most minimal for this planet. We're coming into an age where there's more energy coming in, or our understanding is increasing. So the old time was called Kali Yuga, or dark age, literally, coming into Dwapara Yuga, which means the second period out of 4. So we're just kind of beginning to be teenagers. Right, Lily? She's still here? No, she's gone. Okay, anyway. We think we know it all. But we're kind of like, 11, 12 years old, really, in the scheme of things. And so there's a lot of times we trip and fall. But fortunately, we have elders, hopefully spiritual beings that try to help us along, just kind of step by step. And okay, I know this is what you think it's all about, and I know that this is really kind of the limit of your understanding right now. But there's more. And there's so much more. It's delightful, it's wonderful. But unless you really kind of understand how to navigate through it, you may not appreciate it completely, so I'm going to help. That's what the spiritual path's all about. That's what these folks are all about. And that's what we try to absorb as devotees, as disciples. Disciple simply means I'm going to discipline myself, and I'm going to apprentice myself to a spiritual teacher. And ideally, that's how we learn, is by focusing. Swami Kriyananda said that really understanding can only come through intuition, and intuition can only come through one-pointed spiritual focus. Now let's look at that a little bit. True understanding can only come through intuition. This is what Jesus was trying to say to the Pharisees and people like that. They were so much into, as a religion, Judaism in particular is just very law-based, but then they were attached to it. They had the big temple. They had their institutions that was money-related. You can kind of see things like that in our society too. But you want to not have that shaken up. So fortunately, God has a way of throwing a divine monkey wrench into things that are just too fixed. And whether it's big temples where priests are stuck in their authority and don't really relate to spontaneous joy, or whether it's our own lives where we're kind of habit-based. Maybe they're kind of bad habits of just sort of, this is the way I've always behaved because it always worked for me back in that life back when, so I know how to do this. But meanwhile, we feel ourselves kind of, shrinking or being a little uneasy. Or maybe when we see people that are just a little freer with their expression and we're just kind of not like that, but we don't know how to bridge that gap. Do you know what I'm talking about at all? So these are just habits, and we don't know how to get out of those habits, but Divine Mother, fortunately, sends us divine monkey wrenches or sticks of dynamite or something that sort of blow things up, and they help us get unentrenched from our positions. So Jesus was doing that with the Pharisees and saying, it's not about thinking. It's about heart. It's about relating to God as our loving Father. That's all they could understand back then. Yogananda came around and talked to us as God as your Divine Mother. Because in our period, just beginning to get into Dwapara Yuga in this stage, instead of relating to authority, which is the only thing they could really kind of understand back then in terms of how to behave, now we're understanding the divine, well, feminine, but the divine mother, the divine aspect of compassion, of heart, as being the thing that is really the key to it all. So this is both good news and bad news. This is good news because our heart knows intuitively that this is the direction we need to go in. The bad news is that our habit is such where we tend to think and try to figure out and understand, and that's kind of where we've come from. So if we're adventuresome, spiritually adventurous, which was it Yogananda or Swami Kriyananda? I forget, but they said that that's really the ticket, is spiritual adventuresomeness. So if we want to embrace that, great, because life gives us opportunities all the time to be spiritual adventuresome. Things just come to us that we don't expect. I'm going to point to Vajra because Vajra just had something unexpectedly come. It's just one of these Bell's palsy viruses that just twists your face for a couple of weeks, and then it all goes back to normal again. So it takes, it takes real detachment for me to imagine, my face just kind of going twerk, and then turning back to normal again. And then would I be able to just sort of relate to people like that? Or folks that have had cancer, and all of a sudden women who identify with these, luxurious hairstyles, all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. And they have a bald hairstyle for a while. And then hopefully things resolve and it all comes back. How much do we identify with the form? Or with the habits? What the masters are trying to do is to break us out of that identity. Because growth lies in having opportunities that stretch us, that grow us to infinity. That's what school is. School is taking something and learning it pretty well and proving the lessons that we've learned the lessons, and then we get more opportunities. And to think that, well, no, but I already learned this. I don't need to learn anything else. That's not true. We need to keep learning more infinitely. Sorry. But we do. And until we get to the point and say, this feels great to keep learning and to keep stretching. Now, why wouldn't it feel great? Because we're, attached to that form, because we're entrenched in that identity, because we think, well, this is cool. People like me in this position. Uh-oh. That's a limited identity. That's a limited self-definition. So, Swami Kriyananda kept talking about the ego is a bundle of self-definitions, which are useful to a point, but really spirit is completely spontaneous and free-flowing. Spirit doesn't really have any ego. It doesn't have any self-identity. There's no self. There's nothing that's separate from anything else. The only reality is God expressing divine bliss infinitely, just like the sun in all directions, and expressing through all of us in this creative, bizarre, multifaceted way. It's really fun when you look at it that way. But when we look at it from a, this is my identity point of view, well, then I have to react against other identities that are different and therefore threaten my point of view. The more we can just relax into it, we can let our heart open and let God's love express through it. And that's loving heroically, which is not me making that up. That's me quoting Swami Kriyananda, which I'm going to read to you. This is the book Light Bearer, which I hope you're all familiar with, but this is the book that Asha wrote about her life with Swami Kriyananda. But really, it's about sharing the teachings of this path through that story, and it's phenomenal scripture. So I know a lot of you are reading this and studying this right now, but if you don't already have it or haven't read through it, please buy it and read it, my recommendation, because it's really cool. So this is what Swami, in 1996, he mentioned loving heroically at the end of the previous year. So somebody asked him about that, and he was asked to elaborate. He said, when suffering comes, the temptation is to withdraw from the world and to shrink in on oneself. If at such a time you reach out to help others, that is heroic loving. I think of Hanuman because he's just very comfortable with reaching out to help others in a supportive advocate way, medically and personally, and I admire that. That inspires me to want to do the same. When others hate you and life gives you cause for bitterness, to return hatred with love, to accept disappointment without wavering in your love for God, that is heroic loving. When you love without condition, thinking not of what you can get, but only of what you can give. When you understand that to love is to be happy, that to love is to be happy. It's not that by loving you'll get happiness. That's kind of a merchant consciousness. If I give you this much, I'll get this much back. But no, that your happiness comes from loving. It's the process of it. It's giving it to others. That's where happiness comes from. That is heroic loving. This sounds very much like other saints, like St. Francis, talking about, what is God's joy? And it's all about just being able to accept whatever comes to us as being from God. Now, this isn't easy. This isn't instant. This all sounds good, but it's like, well, yeah, but this is where I'm at. That's great. This is just a direction. So when we know the direction we want to go in, we can say, okay, this is where I'm at, and this is the step that's in front of me. And that's a really important part of the spiritual path. A big problem in spiritualness or in churches or whatever groups is that when we hold a goal up and say, this is the goal, or teachers come and they say, this is the pinnacle, we think, okay, well, that's the only way that it's okay. So I have a problem because I'm here and that's there, so I either pretend that I'm there, but I'm not, and then I have this conflict, or I ignore that or put it down and say that's not realistic and this is okay, which is all right, but there's not a lot of growth that way, Or, better yet, best of all, is to say, great, that's the goal. That's the top of the mountain. That's where I want to go. Here's where I'm at right now. What are the steps I need to do to get there? And that's what spiritual teaching is. So our job is simply to just be honest about where we are so we know where we're starting, and then listen to those folks that have done it and do our best to absorb that into what works for us. Their technique for getting to the top of that mountain, maybe we might have to modify that in our own way to kind of get there in our way, but pretty much we're going to be able to take and adapt and use our intuition to make progress. Okay, now, intuition. It's tough for guys to talk about that because we don't specialize in intuition as much as women typically do. I'm just talking generally, of course. There's two sides, and one is kind of being more with the flow, and the other's being kind of steady, and both are important. Structure and flow dynamics, they both go together. Now, structure was kind of where that old Kali Yuga was at. So, the guys sort of had the advantage of predominating then, because that's sort of what was called for, building a structure. But then you get to the point where it needs to flow a little bit more. And so women are specializing more in that now, in offering the flow, in offering more of the heart's feeling, the open-hearted compassion for others. So we are having to stretch and learn, guys especially, a little bit more about the priority as being compassion and empathy, and not just kind of me versus you and kind of working it out, but actually us together. And that gets to be joyful when we do that, and we all learn from each other. So I want to read a little bit more from Lightbearer, and this is Swami talking about Yogananda and how the master expresses spirituality and how we can relate to it. And it's a little bit more about being heroic in our growth. A lot of times you hear about people, about Kriyananda sharing his life with Yogananda, and you think, oh, if only I was there. Or you hear Asha talk about her life with Swami Kriyananda, and you think, oh, if only I was there. But you know what? We're exactly where we should be. If we should have been there, we would be them, or we would have been with them, or whatever. We're not. We're here. And people are thinking about us, oh, if only I were there with them, doing what they're doing. Just relax and accept and be grateful where you are and share it with others, and God will arrange all the pieces just right, just like a chess game, just the right way. So, Swami Kriyananda says, don't think how lucky those people were who lived with Master. You are with him now. Master is here all the time. At Ananda, in this room. You can feel him. He is omnipresent. His love is a constant presence. Wherever you are, when you sincerely call to him, he is there with you. You are the focus for his presence. Is that easy for you to feel? It's sometimes hard for me to feel that I'm the focus of Master's, or you get the idea, but that he really cares about me. Can you feel that love from God for yourself? I mean, work on that if you can't. Try to open your heart to that he does, and you are worthy of that and deserving of all of it and are getting it right now. Okay, where was I? You are the focus for his presence. All you need to do is make his love more dynamic to your awareness. It is a mistake, though, to define Master's love as the nice things he does for you. He will provide for you. He does smooth the way, but he also wants you to grow, which means giving you difficult experiences too, for that is how we learn. Darn, sorry, but that's just the way it's designed. That's school, or weightlifting or whatever. You just have to keep adding it on. Which means giving you difficult experiences too, for that is how we learn. Treasure those experiences even more than the sweet things he does for you. Yes, there will be temporary pain, but in the end, a power of divine love more blissful than you can imagine. Just hang with that for a minute. I mean, I've found that. It's like, the challenges that I didn't want, or just unexpected things, whatever they are, financial or interpersonal or relationship or spiritual or, any of it, fill in the blank, whatever it is. And you accept that, whether willingly or just kind of, no choice, but you accept it. Hopefully, as a devotee, you can kind of open up and realize that God and gurus are, in fact, behind you. Hopefully, maybe get a glimmer or as much as you can of, all right, this is coming to me. This must be, God's gift to me, or at least God's will for me. How can I open to it and embrace it? How can I, instead of resisting or whining, just kind of like be open? What is the lesson here? How can I cooperate with this divine grace? And then we find we grow. At least, those couple of times that's happened to me, I found, okay, there is growth in that. Yes, there will be temporary pain, but in the end, a power of divine love more blissful than you can imagine. If you want to be free in this lifetime, be a warrior, not a beggar grasping for a penny at the gates of heaven. See everything that happens as a gift from Master. It is always the right thing for you. Have faith in this truth. In building Ananda, I've never said, I lived with Master. Don't you think I should know what he wants? I did live with him, and I should know, but it doesn't help anyone to put it that way. You must recognize truth within yourself. If you don't, what does it matter what I say? That is what Master taught, and that is how we must live. Don't think about Master in terms of then. Think of him as now in this room, and most important of all, as Master in your heart. Okay, so that kind of comes back to intuition. That, I know you do this already, but just whatever comes, challenging, joyful, relate to it from the heart, and you know what feels best intuitively. And then we have all these other overlays of should do this or, shouldn't, or the trying to figure it out. That's okay. That's okay to a certain point, but let your heart be the main thing that tries to figure it out. Okay, let that divine intuition flow. Engage Yogananda, engage the masters, or whoever is your spiritual teacher. Engage their help in using divine intuition as a navigation flow. Now, I guess, do I even know what I'm talking about? No. But, ladies, you can tell me that maybe the challenge on your side of things is you have the feeling, but to have it be calm intuition as opposed to, feelings swinging back and forth. All right? Have I already blown it? I don't know. But anyway, whatever that is, that has to do with just calm intuition. Because that's the balance. It's calm intuition and common sense sort of working together. Spirit and nature. Krishna and Radha, whatever you want to say, but just those aspects of ourselves that intuitively know something, and yet, common sense guiding it. Not too woo-woo, but grounded also. That's the balance. I mean, that's how we help each other in terms of interpersonal, but it's also how we ideally want to do that inside. So appreciate the people that God is acting through around you that are offering gifts that are helpful to your balance. I guess what I really want to say is balance is what it's all about. It's not that we should squelch or squash any part of our personality that we are strong in, you know. It's just that we need to develop other parts to have a nice balance here. And other people are constantly trying to help us with that. God is constantly trying to help us by giving us situations over and over and over again to help get that balance in place. So the more we can kind of welcome that and embrace that and be willing to let go of that limited identity where we think this is what we are, but really God knows that we're all of this and he wants to help us develop these other parts. Be grateful for the opportunities. Be grateful for the people that come around that help represent that for us. Be grateful especially just for the love that God has for us in every circumstance, in every situation. That's all I want to say. Thank you. You may notice that Manisha hasn't talked, which was her choice today. You'll have to grab her after service and pull everything out of her, okay? Yes, I do have a Whispers reading. It's sort of tied in with feet as well. With the dawn of thy coming, let the flowers of my devotion blossom in the garden of my heart. Let me weave a garland of them and lay it at thy feet. Om.
The song we'd like to offer is also written by Swami Kriyananda. It has a chorus that we'd like to invite you to sing along. Luru luru lero, luru luru lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. It sounds like this. Luru luru lero, luru luru lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Try that with us. Luru luru lero, luru luru lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. The secret of laughter lies in the laughing, not in the search for joy. It's a swallow winging on the wind, it's innocence in a boy. Luru, luru, lero, luru, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru, luru, lero, luru, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the singing, not in the song sung welcome but never crave. If you think that laughter lies in things, to things you'll be but a slave. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Joy in the giving, not in the gaining, grasp and will never sing. You can win the world and still be poor, win peace and live like a king. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Sing when the sun shines, sing when the rain falls, sing when the world seems strange. In a tempest seize the lightning flash and ride the winds of change. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru, lero, luru, lai. Joy will come to anyone whose heart has learned to fly. Luru, lero, luru,
Good morning, all. I wanted to let you know what's going on. First of all, we'd love to welcome any newcomers. We have a newcomer table in our in Clarity Room right across the foyer here. So afterwards, if you'd like to stick around, we have treats and bagels and things, and you can ask any questions you'd like. Also, coming up this week, we have our usual classes where we have drop-in meditations, drop-in yoga on Wednesday and Thursday. We have our next Learn to Meditate series starting on Tuesday night if you want to know how to meditate, or you can always come back for free and relearn it if you'd like. We will not have a yoga class on Saturday because we have a special weekend with our guests from Ananda Village, Parvati, Nayaswami Parvati, and Nayaswami Maria, who will be coming up and joining us for the weekend for Kriya. So we have a talk on Friday night, open to everyone, about the Kriya as a way of life. And then on Saturday, we'll have, for those who are already Kriya Bonds, we have a retreat. And then in the evening, we have our Kriya initiation. Please be sure to let us know if you're coming to that. There's a sign-up sheet at the front desk. And then they'll be here on Sunday to give service. So all are welcome to that, of course, as well. And then there was a couple other things I wanted to bring up. One is thank you, Sahadev. Could you please just stand up for a moment? Just so everybody know who you... Yes, you. This is Sahadev. Thank you. He is a wonderful artist and has generously done many things for Ananda. He has wood artwork out here in our boutique, but he recently created a new donation box for us. Please look at it on the wall. Use it if you want to. But notice how beautiful it is. It's a gorgeous piece of art, and we really, really appreciate that donation to the temple. And then, the talk this morning was always inspiring. Thank you. So nice to have you here. And a really good reminder about how much we have here as a spiritual community and in these teachings. The latest news about the coronavirus and these things are yet another thing that is trying to pull us out of our peace of mind, pull us out of our center, threaten our health and well-being and our way of life, and just is yet another way that the world has of messing with us. And we just want to reassure all of you as friends and loved ones that we're doing our best here at the temple to be mindful of that. Dr. Peter Van Houten is a longtime member of Ananda, a great devotee, a physician who was Swami Kriyananda's personal physician for many, many years and still works out there in the medical field. And he wrote up a very thorough and informative paper about the coronavirus and what is going on right now, and we'd love to share it with you. We printed some that look like this, and they're at the front desk. You're welcome to it. It will also be sent out in our newsletter so that there'll be a link, and you can read it there, share it if you want. And just remember that the teachings that we have here, everything we do here, meditation, the energization exercises, affirmations, the visualizations, the yoga that we do, the satsang that we have together, the books that we have out there, the music, everything that this path is our light and our armor that we have against all of these things in the world that threaten to pull us out of that light. And so just continue to be great devotees that you are. Continue to meditate, continue to share that light, and hold always the truth of what is real and what is lasting and what is forever in this world of craziness that comes and goes. If there's anything that we can do for you, please let us know. We always encourage everybody to come to everything. Come and join us. Be spiritual friends. Be a spiritual family together. But in this time, if you feel that for your own health and safety or for those of others that it's not appropriate for you to come, that's okay too. Take care of yourself, take care of others. Take advantage of the incredible wealth that we have online of Ananda also. All the teachings, all the services, all the classes. If you're at home with a cold or something and you feel it's not appropriate to come, tune in online in any way that you can. Thank you for coming and being here this morning. It's wonderful to share the morning with you.